Revenge films.
This was a story from the time I was back home with my parents because I was about to give birth to my hometown. I was only meant to be there for a birth. However, after my birth, my health wasn't recovering very well, and I remained under the care of my mom for a while. My parents' house was about 40 minutes by car from my home, and so it wasn't too far. On the weekends and any other days off work, my husband Jonathan would come home to visit, and every single day he would call me and check on how I was doing. He was a really thoughtful husband. Every time he would arrive, the first thing he would do was express his gratitude to my parents. He would thank them for taking care of me and even brought my dad his favorite treats over to the house. My health wasn't recovering, and so my mom was the one that was pretty much taking care of the baby boy that I had just given birth to. My mother was the youngest of 6 kids and her family, so she was still young and still healthy. I was really fortunate to have such a strong, supportive mother. Of course, I really wanted to get home and be with my husband with our baby. But as long as my health was in this state, I was afraid that between taking care of the baby and taking care of the house, I would become overwhelmed easily. And so there wasn't much that I could do except try to get myself back on my feet. But thanks to being able to relax at my parents' house little by little, my health started to come back and I was starting to feel better. It was right around that time that one day, one of my mom's older sisters, my Aunt Karen, came over. This aunt was actually a very toxic member of the family. She was already belittling my mom as the youngest member of the family and bullying her. And then, as for my mother's daughter, I could tell that she didn't like me very much either and looked down upon me as like a slave. Of course, my mother and I were not fond of this aunt and tried to avoid her. That's why my Aunt Karen showed up unannounced at the house and tried to come in through the front door. She and my mom got into this argument, and perhaps my baby was stressed by the commotion and he started crying. My aunt took advantage of the situation and stormed into the house, and then she barged into my room. At this time, I was sleeping, but then she turned to me and said something that made me think that I must be dreaming.
Hey, you, Nancy! You need to hurry up and get a divorce from your husband!
Huh? I couldn't wrap my head about what she said to me, especially that I'd just given birth to my husband's baby. And I just stood there, stunned in silence, but my Aunt Karen continued to blab with more nonsense.
He's gonna submit to the new marriage certificate with my eldest daughter, Kathy. So yeah, it should be easy, right? It's fine if you want to continue with them in that house. Oh, but you better make sure to send money every month to our family.
I couldn't understand a millimeter of what my Aunt Karen was saying, and I didn't even know how to respond. That best that I could come up with was, "Oh, what are you saying?" I already heard through family members that my Aunt Karen's younger daughter, my cousin Kelly, recently got a divorce, and she became a single mother. She had moved back in with her mother. However, my aunt's only daughter, the elder sister, Kathy, was the family's favorite, so she was going to have Kathy raise Kelly's child. But to give her the label of single mother would leave a bad image to society, and that's what she was going to have her marry my husband, Jonathan. And she said that in our daily lives, it's fine if he's living with me at home, but for everything parenting to a kid, he would show up along with my cousin Kathy at the child's parents. Everything she was saying was crazy, that my jaw hit the floor and I could not get a word out. First of all, even if she were to do that, what on earth was I supposed to happen between me and my cousin? That's why, of course, I tried to explain to her that there is no way that I could let that happen. But then she started saying that I needed to take her grandchild, adopt them, and pay for all of the child support fees because she had given me some celebratory money as a gift. She said that I had the responsibility to also help her family now. It was almost impressive that she could say something that was so outrageous like this, like it was a given. The more I thought about it, the funnier it started to become, and I couldn't contain my laughter anymore. Who on earth would destroy their family and just to hand over their husband like that? Aunt Karen, is there something wrong with you? Do you need to get your brain checked? When I said that, my aunt started to get furious.
What the hell? Don't you know that you guys are my slaves? Stop running your mouth. You need to shut up and do exactly as I say. That's why I even went out of my way to get the divorce papers for you today. So hurry up and sign them right now.
And then she grabbed my right hand and tried to force the pen onto it and trying to force me to sign the paper. She really lost her mind. Stop it. Stop that, Aunt Karen. I was able to get out of my bed, but my body wasn't fully recovered yet, so I didn't have full strength. I wasn't able to fight off my aunt's strong arms, and I desperately tried to defend myself. But then I heard a voice from behind me. "What the hell do you think you're doing to my daughter?" My mom came running into the room with a broom, and with all her strength, she hit her sister with it. Now that I think about it, I didn't hear the sound of a baby crying anymore, so she probably had taken the baby into the family room to sleep on the futon that was there. When I looked up, my mom had the broom up in her hand, and her face was bright red with anger. And then she shook the broom and hit my aunt with it with another swing. Get out of my house right now!
Ouch, stop that! What are you doing? Stop!
While my aunt was cowering underneath my mother, I stood there in shock. I had never seen my mom go against her older sister, nor have I ever seen her lose her temper, so I was completely shocked.
What the hell? All they're gonna do is submit the marriage certificate together, so what's the big deal? It should be fine.
Are you kidding me? I could hear every single word that you were saying down the hall over there. Why on earth should my daughter and her husband, who are very happily married, have a divorce, and on top of that, should have to marry your child? And on top of that, you're trying to get them to send you money. You're trying to get them to raise your grandchild. Babies aren't your toys, you know. My mother had completely lost it, and she continued to swing at my aunt with the broom. Finally, my aunt got up and ran out of the house screaming and crying as she flew out the door. Until now, my mother had never gone against anything that my sister ordered, so this must have been extra terrifying to her. As soon as my aunt was gone, my mom was clearly riled up from having blowing up on her sister, because she was panting and shaking. But seeing my mom like that, who would protect me no matter what it took, I admired her even more than I did before. And then, a few days later, my 2 cousins came out to our family home to apologize with my mom.
We are so terribly sorry that my mother came over and troubled you a couple of days ago. We promise that we're going to ensure that she never does anything like that again.
From what I heard from my cousin Kathy, apparently neither Nora or her sister knew anything about the situation of their mother's plan, and so they were furious about what had happened and went straight to the grandma and grandpa to tell them what was happening. For the record, not even Kathy knew that her mother's plan, and she was completely furious about how outrageous her mother was being. According to Kelly, Kathy had already had a boyfriend of her own. Of course they'd be angry about all this. And first of all, even though Kelly didn't in fact move back home, she was only planning on staying there until she was able to get a new job, and she would be able to work while having a child and was eventually going to move somewhere new. She never intended to stay there forever. Kathy had a lot to say as well, that she had always been bothered by the fact that their mother would always be over-affectionate to her and only her. It's true that I never liked my Aunt Karen ever in my life, but I don't remember disliking my 2 cousins. And at the end of the day, the people to fear the most were my grandma and grandpa. When they found out about the situation, I heard they call Aunt Karen immediately to their house. And first of all, my grandmother had always scolded my Aunt Karen for being so awful towards my mom ever since they were little kids, and yet she came over once again to our place to cause that much trouble. My grandma was furious that they decided to confiscate Aunt Karen's house, and they could easily do that because the house that Aunt Karen was living in was originally my grandparents' house. However, as they got older and they were less able to move around freely, they also had to frequently visit the hospital, so they decided to purchase the apartment closer to the city center. At the time, they were mainly considering demolishing the house and selling it to the land. However, my Aunt Karen begged them to let her live there, so they agreed. My Aunt Karen, that was a perfect situation. She wouldn't have to pay rent, and because that they were in such a great location. Once the 2 of them passed away, she thought that she would be able to sell the land for a lot of money. That was her evil intention, but now that the house was confiscated, the future was completely gone for her. When she found out that she was getting kicked out,
"Why is this happening? Well then, where am I supposed to live? What about my retirement?"
She was throwing a tantrum, but in order to finally put out the flame, I think it was the best decision made. My grandparents love their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren, so they said that they would wait until Kathy and Kelly were able to find their own places. However, as soon as the 2 of them moved out, they immediately confiscated the house. Aunt Karen no longer had anywhere to live, and after that, she was left no choice but to move into a rundown apartment by herself. I heard that both her daughters cut off all ties with her as well, but that's a given, isn't it? She was trying to take her grandchild and put them in the care of somebody else without the mother's permission, and she was also trying to force a marriage without any acknowledgement from either party. Of course, no child would want to be with a parent like that. And then, as for my grandparents, they warned Aunt Karen that if she were to ever bother my family and her daughter's family ever again, this time they would leave her out of the inheritance entirely. When she heard that, she must have been scared of her because finally Karen stopped saying anything and she never came over to our house ever again. After that, my health finally recovered and I was finally able to go back home to my house. My husband came to pick me up and told him about what happened. I was temporarily moved back into my family house. I never could have imagined that I would get roped into a situation like that, but I have to admit that I was a little bit happy that I finally got to see my mom stand up to fight back against my aunt after being bullied for all these years, just to protect me. As for my aunt, she can take that.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.